So is Transnistria a de facto separatist enclave of Moldova that is under the influence of Russia? It's been sponsored by Russia for 3 decades. Is it about to make a turn away from Russia's sphere of influence? Привit, my name is Connor Klein, and I'm an expert in international relations, and I've been living in Ukraine for many years, so I'm here to give you a more nuanced, informed, and unique perspective on the happenings of the Russo-Ukrainian war. Transnistria, perhaps you've never heard of it. It is a sliver of territory in Moldova that fought a war with the central Moldovan government in the early 1990s. And as a result of that, it has been de facto independent, so not recognized internationally, so it's not legally independent. It has all the trappings of a state. I've been there many times, must be about 30 times I've been there over the years, not for quite a while. And it has its own currency, it has its own flag, so it has the trappings of a state, but it is not officially recognized, not even by Russia itself. In order to create a ceasefire situation in the early 90s, about 1,500 Russian peacekeepers have been stationed there since then. So there are Russian soldiers there and some Russian equipment. I've seen it myself driving through Transnistria. And it has continued in this situation where it has had de facto independent but not de jure independence. Now what's interesting about Transnistria, not only is it considered pro-Russian, or it's propped up by Russian sponsorship, it was extremely prosperous relative to the rest of Moldova, which was not a very high bar, in the late Soviet Union. So upon independence, Moldova was very poor, obviously, like most of the Soviet Union, but it was even a relatively poor part of the Soviet Union. And then you had Transnistria, which had a lot of industry, and as a result was actually wealthier. However, nowadays, Transnistria has a GDP per capita of roughly 1/3 the rest of Moldova. So in the last few years, Moldova's economy has improved quite a lot. The central government in Chisinau, I've featured on my lifestyle channel quite a bit. I quite like Chisinau and Moldova. Great wine there if you ever get the chance to go. And Transnistria has fallen way behind that. It is now, economic output is roughly about 1/3 of the rest of the country. So on top of that, Russia has helped Transnistria quite a bit by providing extremely cheap gas. It's actually something they tried to leverage with the rest of Moldova. Now Moldova, the central government of Chisinau has turned away from using any Russian gas. But strangely, perhaps because of this Russo-Ukrainian war, Ukraine has allowed Russian gas to transit via Transnistria onwards to the rest of Europe in spite of the full-scale invasion or the extended invasion of February 24, 2022 and the original invasion of Ukraine by Russia in 2014. However, the agreement covering those transit supplies of gas, which bring in about $1 billion to Ukraine every year, is about to expire on December 31st, 2024, which means on January 1st, 2025, there will be no more gas transiting through Ukraine. Actually, in the Kursk region, the station by which it comes into Ukraine has actually also been seized by the Ukrainians in that small part of Kursk Oblast in Sucha, where they occupy currently a small part of Russian territory. So basically, the Transnistrians are going to lose one of their main economic resources, which is cheap Russian gas. And they're already only at 1/3 the GDP per capita of the rest of Moldova. So what is likely to happen? They are going to face a huge economic crisis. In fact, today there is an economic state of emergency that has been announced by the Transnistrian authorities. They want people to ration basically the gas and other economic resources because in a few weeks from now, they are pretty sure they're going to be without this cheap Russian gas and their energy expenses and costs are going to explode. They're really going to dramatically increase, and their economy, which is already pretty backward compared to even Moldova, the rest of the country, it's going to hit a very critical point. So the reason to bring this up, we had obviously the fall of the Assad regime in Syria. This is a huge embarrassment and a great lack of power projection by Russia, potentially if they cannot keep those military naval bases there. But definitely in terms of prestige, and a negative signal towards Russia's allies or other regimes that they're propping up, that they cannot rely on Russia because Russia is so overstretched and weakened by the amount of resources that it has invested in trying to crush Ukrainian independence through the Russo-Ukrainian war. So we have currently also protests against a pro-Russian government in Georgia. And those protests, as I said in the video yesterday, are very reminiscent of the Euromaidan protests, which basically led to the Russo-Ukrainian war that happened in late 2013, early 2014. And then as a result of the overthrow of a pro-Russian president, Viktor Yanukovych, Russia started the Russo-Ukrainian war and actually invaded Crimea first and then Donbass. So these geopolitical events are going on over there. So what is Moldova how is it going to react? It had recent presidential elections and a referendum putting a clause into the constitution that it is on the path towards European Union membership. The incumbent president won the presidential election. She is a pro-EU candidate. She defeated by 55% versus 45%, with the Transnistrians also still voting in that election against a pro-Russian candidate. So Transnistria, as it looks towards Russia for continued support, it is a long, long way away from where the Russian forces are in Ukraine. It has no border. It only has a border with Ukraine and the rest of Moldova. And its economy is going to probably implode in 2025. So I would expect the Transnistrian authorities to start to re-engage with the central government in Chisinau and potentially look to rejoining the rest of the country, because being de facto independent has resulted in a situation where they went from being better off economically than the rest of Moldova to a situation where they only currently have 1/3 the GDP per capita, so they live significantly worse than the rest of the country, and it's about to get a hell of a lot worse for them. So they're going to have to find some sort of compromise with the government in Chisinau if they cannot rely on Russia for support. And as we've seen, Russia will abandon its allies. It invested a huge amount of resources into the Assad regime because they were getting a benefit out of it as well with that power projection. And now we see them abandon Assad pretty quickly. And Georgia got a potential revolution about to take place there. And also Transnistria going to be pretty low priority in this situation. So I would expect some sort of rapprochement between Transnistrian authorities and the central Moldovan government in Chisinau. Let's see what happens. Definitely for sure, if Russia is not willing to somehow provide enormous economic support for Transnistria, it is going to suffer hugely in 2025, and staying de facto independent is not going to look very attractive. And we also have to see what will happen with the Russian troops that were there, because earlier on in the Russo-Ukrainian war, the Ukrainians were worried that they could be used to, along with maybe Transnistrian militias, to attack the city of Odessa. It is very close. It takes, to get Transnistria, probably takes about an hour from the outskirts of Odessa only. That border is actually closed. It has been closed since 2022. So Ukraine will be particularly interested in seeing the rapprochement and the removal of those Russian forces if that is what takes place. So going to be a very interesting 2025, and Transnistrian authorities, kind of a peculiar case as it is de facto, but not recognized by anyone, not even Russia, and it will be interesting to see in what state it continues. So I'll leave it at that for today's video. Do pobачення, and